We have now completed the first 2 days of pre-season testing in Bahrain, and so I thought today we are going to be taking a look at the data and seeing what we have learned in a data analysis. Part 1 of this video will look at day 1, and part 2 will be looking at day 2. If you enjoyed the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get straight into the video. So, as I said, the first part will be looking at the first day of pre-season testing. And the first day was not just the first opportunity to see all the brand new F1 cars out on track in anger, but it was also the first look at what the pecking order might be this season. The first day of running typically sees a few red flags and plenty of errors by the drivers. However, with this being the third year of these current regulations, that wasn't really the case. The reliability of these cars has been very impressive, and the only red flag came when Alex Albon and his Williams stopped out on track during the day session. Speaking of Albon, for Williams this was not a great day. They did not complete a great deal of laps and mileage, and also Albon used the C4 tyres, and when he did his lap, it was not very impressive. For his teammate Logan Sargent, things were not too much better, and the highlight of his day was a spin going into turn 9. Williams only completed 61 laps for the entire first day. VCarb were the next closest when it came to mileage, but they managed to complete 115 laps, and the team with the most amount of laps on day 1 was Haas with 147 laps. For Haas, they spent the entire day focusing on getting as much running as they possibly could, so that they could see if they have resolved any tyre wear woes that they may have had from last year. Just behind Haas for mileage, and well, it was the team and driver that dominated the first day, and that was Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Not only did he complete the second most amount of laps, but also he set the fastest time by a scarcely believable 1.1 seconds from Lando Norris in the Mclaren. But how did he do that? Well, let's take a look at those 2 laps from the first day to see where and why Max Verstappen was so much faster than the McLaren driver. Firstly, Verstappen's time was set a little bit later in the day, so naturally he would have a better circuit, and also probably a little bit better of an understanding of the car. But it's not just that. Red Bull, it seems, is just faster just about everywhere. Down each straight, Verstappen is reaching a higher top speed, and as it goes through turns 5, 6 and 7, Verstappen has a massive advantage as he can carry a lot more speed, showing that the Red Bull is already in a very good position when it comes to balance. He can change directions very quickly and carry the speed. He doesn't have to worry about instability. Verstappen also carries more speed into the tricky turn 10, which again would indicate that the Red Bull is probably in a better position already. So, does this mean that it is game over already and Red Bull have a 1 second edge? Well, not really. I have a feeling that yes, Red Bull has got some margin over the competition, but they definitely did have things turned up a little bit more than their rivals. You can see that in the lap between Norris and Verstappen, he was easily faster in a straight line all the way down the straight. And in this graph here, we have the top speed from the fastest lap for each team. And you can see here that Red Bull has a decent few kilometers per hour on absolutely everyone. Notably here, Haas and Mercedes were a long way down. The reason was both teams were fully focused on race runs. There's still a long way to go in terms of performance. Last year, the top speed in qualifying reached by Red Bull was 323 km per hour. So even though Red Bull had an edge, you can still see they have things turned down. For Mercedes, on the face of it, day 1 looked fairly negative in a way. They didn't produce any fast laps, but there was a reason for that. Mercedes ran the entire day on longer runs, and when you bring up the laps of Russell, Piastri and Leclerc, you can get a better understanding of that. This is a longer runs from the morning session. Here you can see that early on, Mclaren and Ferrari opted to pump in a few faster laps before sticking the fuel in and going for some longer runs. Mercedes, however, opted to just keep going around and around and around. When we look back at the top speed chart, you can see what I mean as well. Their top speed was only 308 km per hour, which is 7 km per hour down than what the top speed was by Red Bull. So for day 1, Red Bull were in complete control. Williams and Alpine looked like they were struggling a lot, and Mercedes opted to fully focus on longer runs, so we're going to have to wait and see how they get on a little bit later on. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about day 2 of testing. Day 2 of testing saw a little bit of a different running order. Some things however did look the same. Alpine and Williams still looked like a bit of a handful when they were on track, and when you compare the times of Bottas in the Sauber, Sargent in the Williams and Ocon in the Alpine, you can see that really the Sauber kind of looked better than both teams currently do. Sargent and Williams on day 2 focused on just getting as many laps as possible on the board, but there were plenty of mistakes that happened. The same goes for both Alpine drivers of Ocon and Gasly as well. I think Alpine right now could be the 7th fastest car in Bahrain. Looking at the longer runs as well, one thing that is clear is that the Sauber car is better on their tyres than the Williams is right now. But with the number of slides that Sargent had, I wouldn't be surprised if the Williams just used their tyres more aggressively. It will be interesting to see how the midfield looks on day 3 of testing, and if we will see some performance from Haas finally, who right now are just trying to get mileage on the board. Speaking of mileage for day 2, the team that covered the most laps was Ferrari with 138 laps. The team that covered the least amount of laps was sadly for them McLaren, as reliability woes struck both McLaren and Red Bull. Both teams had a number of issues, but for McLaren it meant that they had to spend a little bit more time in the garage than they otherwise would have liked to have done. In day 3, they will need to try and make sure that they don't have a repeat of these issues, and McLaren are going to need to get some more laps on the board, just so that they can get a much better understanding of their car for the Bahrain Grand Prix, which is of course just a week away. Speaking of Red Bull, it was clear that Perez had a much harder time of the new RB20 than his teammate Max Verstappen did the previous day, and rather surprisingly, it looks like in the race pace between Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, it kinda looks like that Sainz in the Ferrari had the edge over Perez. Now, we are not sure if this was down to power unit settings, but this could be an indication that the pace from day 1 was down to Verstappen running with things turned up a little bit more, which is why his advantage was so large. For Ferrari, they will gain confidence from this, because not only is that the case, but it seems like Sainz managed the pace a lot better than he could in 2023, potentially indicating that the Ferrari is going to be a little bit kinder on its tyres in 2024, which will help them when it comes to race performance. Let's now compare the fastest laps of the day between Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. Much like in day 1, Perez in the Red Bull has a top speed advantage. However, when it comes to the braking zones, such as turn 4 for example, Sainz in the Ferrari manages to carry more minimum speed and therefore gets a better drive out of the corners, even though the Red Bull it seems has things turned up a little bit more. Sainz also carries more speed at the apex of the final corner as well. The top speed for day 2 is a fair bit larger than the top speed for day 1 for Red Bull, as it increased from 315 to 320 km per hour. In fact, it was once again Red Bull who topped the top speed charts, with the majority of teams showing a little bit of an improvement in straight line speed, maybe indicating that they were running with things turned up just a little bit more in day 2 versus day 1. McLaren, it seems though, is still just lacking a little bit of top speed, which could be down to the fact that they did have a reliability issue, and if they didn't have that, then maybe they would have had more confidence to run with the power unit settings a little bit higher. Haas, it seems, is once again nowhere when it comes to top speed, as like I said, they were still focusing on the long run performance. For day 3, it will be interesting to see what the teams do. I anticipate that towards the end of the day, we will see teams stretch their cars just a little bit more, but not to the full extremes. For that, we're going to have to wait until qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix. So, I hope you enjoyed this little data analysis video, and if you did, as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.